I'm super excited. Today I have the photo detective on. This is Maureen Taylor. She is the expert on dating old photographs and helping you figure out who those missing unknown people are in your photographs. And so we're going to walk through some tips and tricks and a little bit about the dating of photographs. And then she's going to kind of walk us through some of my photographs that I have some missing unknown ancestors in. And we're going to kind of go through what we know, what we don't know, and where to go next with some of my photographs. I think it'll be a good learning experience for everybody. There is a handout for this episode. It's got some of those tips and tricks, some of Maureen Taylor's website information, and some of the books. Oh my gosh, she's written so many books on the subject. So I can't wait for you to see this. Let's check it out. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us here on Genealogy TV. I'm super excited. If you can help us get an understanding of a little bit of tips, maybe how to get started with dating our photographs or identifying people in the photographs, where do we get started?
Thank you, Connie, for having me on the show. I love working with individuals and their family photos. So the first thing you need to do is think about, well, where did you get those photographs from? Who owned them? Who owned them before that person? And who owned them before that person, if you know. So it's really important to start by dating the photo, like thinking about when it might have been taken so you can develop, some ideas about the picture. But I will say, here's one of the tips. Don't assume.
Good point.
Don't create an entire story about why that photograph is in your collection and who gave it to you. Let the facts lead you to the story, not the other way around.
That's what we do with records too.
We
try not to have that bias, that confirmation bias kind of thing with our regular records. So this is good. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing is, don't trust what's written on the back of the picture. Just don't do it. Be a doubter. How do you know who wrote that caption? So my favorite thing is someone comes to me with a picture and it's like an 1880s photo and all over the back is ballpoint ink. Did that person who wrote that caption in ballpoint ink, which is not approved for writing on the back of a picture, know the person in the 1880s photo? Because ballpoint ink doesn't come around until about 1943.
Good thinking.
So did you know that person, or was it just a story passed down? So photo captions are a lot like a game of telephone. Remember that game of telephone you used to play when you were a kid? Probably nobody plays that game anymore. But the idea was you sit in a circle, somebody says something into one ear, and then by the time it gets all around, it's unrecognizable. The same thing with photo captions.
So true. That's
so those three things. Determine who might have given it to you. Don't make up a story until you have the facts to prove it, and don't assume the caption on the back is correct.
Really good points.
Yeah.
I'm wondering though, think about this. So you're sitting down with your grandmother, right? 30 years after this photograph was taken, or maybe even longer, and she has a ballpoint pen, or you have maybe this was done back in the 40s when you're not supposed to be doing this, right? But somebody has written, from a conversation, well, come on, Grandma, you're going to tell me who this is, right? I know we'd be doing that in pencil now, but yeah, so it could be a clue though.
Actually, here's what you're going to do now. So if you are sitting down today with a family member and you have a smartphone, I want you to download an app or use your voice recorder on that smartphone and record that person. Because like MyHeritage Reimagine app lets you attach that audio to the file. File Shadow lets you attach that audio to the file. You can, there are tools out there on the web that are, I think, free, where you just go in and it will transcribe that caption for you, or that conversation.
Wow. Now, Ancestry's photo scanning app, I think, has an audio function as well.
Yes.
They're using the PhotoMine technology, and I know PhotoMine has it. So
yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier, so you can focus on the person in front of you and you can just tap your phone and record it. It's so easy.
Good information.
There's so many new tools and they're so helpful.
And, I'm a big believer, being a video person, that you really need to sit down and and photograph or videotape your elders today. Like,
You do.
don't wait,
You
because
do.
those videos are cherished forever. I know I sat down when I was about 19 years old with those old tape recorders,
Yes.
where you pressed play and record at the same time, and
Right.
recorded my grandmother. And I listened to that again about 3 months ago, and it just listening to her voice again for the first time in decades was
Oh, the
really
emotional
something.
that.
So let's talk about frames and cardstock, that kind of stuff. Does that provide us any clues as to how to identify our photographs?
So the first thing I like to start with is, what type of photograph is it? Is it a daguerreotype, a shiny, reflective image from the 1840s and 50s? Is it an ambrotype, which is on glass? Is it a tin type on iron? Or is it a paper photograph? That's what I start with. You first figure that out. Now, there can be cardstock copies of daguerreotypes and ambrotypes and tin types. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. And then when you start looking at the card photographs, you do look at the cardstock. What is the size of that cardstock? What is the design of that cardstock on the front and the back? What color is that cardstock? So for the 1880s, for instance, they call it chocolate colored cardstock, was very popular. Not so much in the 1890s, when most people wanted the sort of creamy white cardstock. And then you get into the 20th century and it's a whole nother thing. But the 19th century, you really can tell something about a photograph and when it was taken by both the format and the cardstock.
Interesting, because the audience doesn't realize this as they're watching this, but I have sent you some photographs, and as you were talking about that cream cardstock, I was thinking, oh, that helps the one photograph that I sent you
Of the three of the children.
of the unknown children.
Yeah,
So
which I have more to say.
good. I'm looking forward to it. I do want to get through a couple other questions though
Sure.
first. So what do you think of the MyHeritage PhotoDater app? Be honest.
So yeah. So the MyHeritage PhotoDater, they announced that they were going to put this together. I think they announced it at Roots Tech in 2020. And so I've known it was coming for a while. I did a test with it. They sent me like early access for 24 hours to put it through its paces. It is machine learning. So it's interesting in that it does an okay job, but you still have to go in and do the steps to verify the date that they've given you. Because, so here's, if you upload a photograph into the MyHeritage PhotoDater and you don't get a response for a date, that means they don't have enough information to date the photograph. So I find it works best with a full body shot of someone rather than just a head and shoulders picture. Somehow it's not able to read that. And they did go and accumulate photographs and dated photographs from all over the world, from their subscribers and from people who work for the company. They did all of that. But photographs are full of nuances. How long is someone wearing that clothes? Where was it actually taken? Is it a costume? Is it a military uniform? There's no standard military uniforms in the 19th century, even within military companies.
Right.
So there's a lot of information I've accumulated in my brain in all these years that the algorithm doesn't have yet. Do I think it's going to get better? I do. I think it's pretty good for what it does initially. And if it gives you a date, you click on, it says estimated date, there's a little box, and you click on that date, that box, and it drops down and it tells you what the margin of error is.
Okay.
Is it 4 years, 3 years? Somebody told me they got a margin of error of 16 years. I think it's a tool. So you have to try it. You can't not try it.
So I was messing around with it, and one of the photographs that I uploaded was a husband and wife standing in front of their car, and I don't remember what kind of car this is. I'm going to say it's like a Model T. I mean, it's an old car. My thinking is that car, they could have had that car for 20 years. Quite honestly, clothing was very expensive, so they could have been wearing the same dress or the same hat for 10 years. after the fashion was,
Right.
first introduced. And so,
And the dater, they uploaded trade catalogs. So I haven't actually tried it with an image without people in it, but supposedly it can date images without people.
okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier military uniforms briefly, and I
Yeah.
was thinking about this. There's no, I have been kind of searching the web trying to find websites that have good information or visual information about uniforms, so that if we have a photograph of somebody in a Civil War uniform, let's say, how
Right.
can we figure out what unit he was in, or what, based on the buttons or the patches or the badges? Do you know of any website that's like a one-stop shop for that kind of stuff?
So let's talk about military uniforms.
Okay.
Very specific, very difficult case. There are people who are military experts. First thing you have to do is figure out when that photograph was taken. Is it really Civil War? Is it after Civil War? Is it pre-Civil War? Depending on the uniform, you have to decide who might it be and where they lived, so where they might have enlisted. And then using that, you can do some searching to figure out what military units were in that area and what their uniforms were. There is no comprehensive guide to US military uniforms, or actually any in the world. In the 19th century, military uniforms don't become standard until the 20th century. So you could be looking at a wide variety of uniforms. One of the sources I use is something called Osprey Press, OSPREY. They publish these little informational books. They're very heavily illustrated and they're not very expensive, of military units all over the place.
Oh, really?
And that's quite helpful. When we were talking about the MyHeritage PhotoDater and you were talking about that car, you can use Google Lens, although I'm not having great luck with it. Every so often it hits on something in the background to give me, the cars actually are a pretty good example. It'll give you maybe the type of car or a similarly designed car. But military uniforms are very tricky. I have you can see my office. I have a couple of shelves just on military uniforms, and I could fill this office with books just on military uniforms from all over. They're very tricky. It really,
Yeah.
you have to lead yourself down the path. This is a perfect example where the documentation goes hand in hand with you trying to decipher the photo information. That said, there are photo historians who believe that every single person that served in the American Civil War was photographed at one time or another, like during the war. There were so many photographers roaming around.
Interesting.
I live in hope.
Right?
I live in hope.
I have been after Ancestry since Roots Tech to do a photo reverse lookup. You know how you can do that on Google? Yeah. So what I've been trying to get them to do, and we're going to show some of my photographs here in a moment, but to upload those photographs, maybe even as unknown photographs, in your gallery, and that Ancestry can check the rest of the Ancestry world to see if somebody else has uploaded the same photograph with identification. I'm like, boy, wouldn't that be cool?
You're on the right track. So when someone comes to me and they have this photograph, like a group picture, it's got 10 people in it, and they're like, I don't know who these 10 people are. Right. This is the advice I'm following now. You know that photograph was taken in, say, 1880, and the oldest couple in the photograph. So you know that maybe their children are in there. You have to research each one of those children and their descendants forward, because photographs get inherited in odd patterns in families. It's not oldest to oldest to oldest. It's who has the interest. Maybe it's a cousin. What was the family relationships like? Who did they send pictures to? Who did they get pictures from? And one of my clients actually followed this advice. It took her, I don't want to scare your people, 10 years. And she had this photograph that we decided who it must be, but she had to prove it. And so over the decade, with other life things coming up, she researched all the descendants of those people, that couple, and discovered that one person in in every generation of the descendants. So like they had 5 kids and those 5 kids had 5 kids. So one person in each generation had a copy of that. And some of them had it identified as the couple that she thought it was. That clear? She was great. It was great. It was a great example. Other times I have clients come to me and they say, I have this picture, and I'm like, let's go online and see if there's any other photographs of this couple. And of course, you go on Ancestry, MyHeritage, Family Search, whatever you can. It's always worth Googling it just to see what happens. You never know. And sometimes we come up with, they just have the head and shoulders, but online we find the entire picture.
There you go.
Which then you have to reach out to them and say, what else do you have? And here's what I have. Recreate the family archive.
So we're going to jump into my photographs here in just a second, but one last question. What do you recommend for researching the photographer or studio that is listed like on a cardstock photograph?
This is something I would like MyHeritage to do. They have the city directories. This is what I want them to do. Many people have tried. Many people have said to me over the years, oh, I'm going to make this comprehensive guide to photographers all over the country and all over the world. Go right ahead. There's so much information out there. But it is in city directories and things. So the first thing I recommend is people Google the name with the place, because you never know if your ancestor lived in a small place and you find a collection of that photographer that you're not going to find other pictures of different family members in that collection. So Google the name. Someone might have already researched the photographer, or they have other images by the photographer. 2, go on eBay and search for the photographer.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Right? What else? Go on reunion sites like Dead Fred, and you can search photographers on that as well. And so you want to do all of that. And then, of course, if you know where it was taken, there are some directories for photographers. Like there's one for Ohio, there's one for South Carolina. There's one, just a general book on Western photographers. There's one on Massachusetts that's very good. But also use city directories and census records. Research those photographers like they're a member of your family.
Good point. I have also found them at state archives.
State archives, libraries, right.
Sometimes might have information about the photographer, not necessarily their collection. Sometimes they might have their collection, but
yeah, a lot of that stuff's been digitized, so it might pop up in a Google search.
How cool. All right, let's talk about the photographs. I sent you 3 photographs.
You did.
So all of these photographs that I'm getting ready to share with you are from my Danish side of the family. Okay, so this photograph, this house is still standing in Laramie, Wyoming.
Is it the same size?
It is slightly changed. The front of the house now is no longer brick, it is stucco. And they have added a porch on the front. So this door, I am assuming, is gone. But this is all enclosed, this area right here.
Yeah.
The only thing I really know about this photograph is where it was taken, and that this little boy right here is supposedly my great-grandfather, Herman Madsen. He was born in 1880, which helps us quite a bit when we're trying to date the photograph. What I don't know about this photograph is the people, the adults in it.
So what do you know about that family? He was born in 1880. What does the family look like in 1880?
This is the family tree. So this is the little boy in the photograph.
That's supposed to be
on the rocking horse.
Photograph.
His father's
let me see his father, because his father and mother. I want to see what other siblings he had.
So we have siblings. So there's siblings. And I thought about that too, that maybe one of these males was the other guys in the photograph, because I was assuming
scroll up a little bit. So you got Ida, Herman, and Alma. So the only little boy, everybody's too old. So there's things that help date the photograph, the woman's dress and hat. She's all decked out for this picture in the front lawn. There were itinerant photographers that traveled.
Right.
I always think it's interesting how people are posed. So you've got all those birch trees. Are those birch trees still on the property? Probably not.
No, I don't believe they are.
So it looks like maybe you've got father and his second wife, or father and one of his daughters and one of his sons. The question is, how old is the woman holding the flower? She's obviously quite proud of her gardening expertise. The little boy on the hobby horse That's a
That's
fancy.
that's
That's a
Herman
fancy.
Madsen. He's the only child, though. He is the only child of this wife.
Right. And she
Oh,
was
I
born
see what you're
in
saying.
right. So she was born in 1855. He's got to be close to 10 years old in that picture, if not 10. So she would be, let's say it's 1890, 1855. She would be what, 40, 35 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that woman in the picture look like she's 35 years old?
Kind of hard to tell. That's the best I could get that. I think that's pretty.
All
I
right,
actually have the original photograph of this.
let's go back to the family tree just for a sec.
I don't know if that's too
Those are
small.
his siblings. So he has one spouse, not two spouses.
Right. And
Laura,
this one
Augusta,
as an infant. So the only other
right.
child is this one who
Alma,
dies young.
right. So she dies before us. Right. So they just have one child. So it's got to be Herman. So then
Correct.
who's the other person in the photograph? Who's the young man in the photograph? Is it another Madsen? He's born, Christopher Madsen is the youngest child of Mads Hansen and Marie.
Correct. And
So,
so Danish culture,
hmm,
only the eldest son inherited the land in Denmark, typically.
right.
So, and with Christopher being down here at the bottom of this list, he immigrates to the United States. Now, I don't know for sure. I have done some research on these guys, but most of them are not popping any records. I need to actually go to the Danish archives and really dig into these guys and see I don't have death dates on any of these guys here.
Right. So maybe we can say the hypothesis is that in that picture is dad Christopher Madsen with a mustache,
Perhaps,
perhaps the son, the only remaining child that they own,
right?
maybe taken somewhere around 1888 or 89, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then mom is posed with her flowers. The mystery guy is the guy on the far right. Is he another Madsen? He looks younger than the dad. So the question
He does
is
look younger.
is the dad the one with the mustache, or is that another family member? An older brother of the Madsen? Everybody's well dressed. There's nobody dressed like they're working out in the yard or working with the horses.
Yeah, this was clearly staged. You can see the horses on a pedestal here of
Platform.
some sort.
Right. And they've brought their nice needlepoint or upholstered chair out on their little porch as well in the back. And everybody's dressed up for the picture.
I do remember my grandmother telling me there was a horse stable over here.
Yep, and that makes sense. So then,
So I do know that if this is Christopher, well, I'll show you a picture of Christopher in a second. I do know that Christopher built this house.
it makes sense for it to be Christopher. But then who's the other guy who actually looks a bit like Christopher?
I'm wondering if maybe it's her brother.
Could be her brother. Did he live with them?
That's a good question. I can't remember. Let's see. This would be spouse.
But if you're looking for a reason to have taken this photograph, this is a couple that's lost two children, and their one remaining child is in this picture, and he's built this house. Do you know when he built this house?
I could look it up. I don't know offhand.
What's the occasion for taking the picture?
I
One
do know it's
must be-
listed in an 1885 photograph.
Right. So is this a photograph to document the house? Is it a photograph meant to document the house, but also more importantly, to document the one remaining child before that child dies? Because they've already lost two.
Yeah, since the daughter is not in the photograph and she
This was
died.
after 1887.
Yeah, interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
All good lessons. Let me show you a picture of Christopher and Laura a little bit closer. So this is Christopher and Laura and their granddaughter, Bernice.
6, you said.
Yeah, this photograph, she was born in 1906, so I don't know how old she is, 5, 6, 7 years old-ish. Kind of hard to tell with her
Yeah,
sitting
she's like
down.
5 or 6, right?
Yeah.
But Connie, what do you see on the shelf of that table in front of them? It's like a little table in the center, right? Scroll down in that, drag that up. You see that thing right there on the shelf underneath?
Yes.
That's a photo album.
I know. I would love to have it.
That's a really nice photo album, and there are pictures of everybody in there. That's a 19th century photo album.
have always been wanting to know who these people are in this photograph. I don't know if you can see that very well, but clearly they have documented some of their life here. This
All
is
right,
ships on the ocean.
this is them
Yeah.
up in that threesome.
Up here?
It could be them
Interesting.
in
Yeah,
the
because
in the
that
right. He's got the mustache. He hasn't gotten rid of his mustache yet. That could be her, but it would be in the 90s. And then he is older.
yeah,
The son
Herman.
is older.
That I'll have to think about it. How old do you think that boy is in that photograph?
He's in teens. He's in his
That's
teens.
what I'm thinking.
So it could be 1895. It's hard to know. You can't really get really close to it and look. And then they, like many 19th century people, they have tacked up photographs all over the place. So behind, yeah, that one right there. Yep, on the table, there's another picture.
Yes.
Is that the daughter who died over there on the left? This looks like people maybe seated at a table next to that. And then you've got the women in the big hats from the early part of the 20th century. Who were they?
Yeah,
And you've got that photo album that's
now
missing.
you got me interested. I need to go back. I had inherited some digital versions of some photographs from this family from my elder cousin.
Yeah.
And but a lot of them are unidentified. I need to go back and look at those pictures compared to these pictures and see if they match.
What is he looking at on his lap? Another photo album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is taken, by the way, in that house I showed you in the previous picture.
That's great.
Yeah. So this is somewhere in that living room. The front door is probably behind the photographer, I'm guessing. I don't know.
But you're missing 2 photo albums. And you're missing the pictures that are up on the walls.
Wouldn't that be great? I sent you information about this, but after I sent this, I think it may be wrong. So this photograph is unknown children, and it is labeled Provo, Utah. And I remember my grandmother telling me that she thought this was the Schroeder children. And so what I need to do is explain what the Schroeder children basically were the half siblings to my great grandmother.
Right.
But in doing further research,
by the way, the work that we are doing with your family photographs is what I do with my clients.
Fabulous. And
I lead them along the path to figure out how their pictures fit into their family history, what they might be missing, and I give homework.
And how can they?
I started calling it homework because I give people like a whole list, like this is what you need to do next.
And we'll give that information here about how to get a hold of you here shortly.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sadly, Ancestry does not do location search, but Family Tree Maker does. And so what I did was, I know this is really hard to see, but I did a search for Provo, Utah in my entire family tree, and I came up with the Anchor Johnson family. So let me show you the Anchor Johnson family, because they're part of the same family, but instead of going down this line, it's this line here. And I'm starting to think that these children, because I know that they came from Denmark, unknown children, I believe.
You could have Olaf, Arthur, and Herman.
That's what I was thinking, if these are all males.
And they could easily be all males. Although this does look like a little girl in this little skirt. Is the hair parted on the side or down the center? The typical way girls parted their hair was right down the middle, and little boys had their hair parted on the side. And it was also traditional, if you had a kid who was not 5 years old yet, a boy, that you put them in a skirt rather than short pants.
And that's kind of what I was thinking too, is that,
I mean, they could be cousins too. I mean, you don't know. They could be. And I believe in Scandinavian families, there's a lot of cousin connections. So the other thing to consider, Connie, is that this family and the family we just talked about sent images of their families back to Sweden. And then the Swedish people sent pictures back to them. Denmark.
That's all right.
Oops.
And all of these kids, if they are this family, they are all born in Denmark. And I do know that Anchor immigrated. So this is my great grandmother here.
When did they immigrate?
1881.
So he doesn't get married until he's in Wyoming or Utah, and the children So in the 1890s, so the photographer was in business in Provo from 1890 to 1910. So where they have to be, the photograph sometimes gives you information that you can't document in other types of documents. So you know that they were in, if this is that family, that they were in Provo circa.
They are in Provo in the 1900 census. That's how I found.
When are the children born?
Let me show you the. I actually was thinking that this photograph may have been photographed near this 1900 census.
Right.
Because
so in 1900, Olaf would be 11, Arthur would be 9, Herman would be 6. This
okay,
is
so we have
not
10, 8, and 5 here.
94, 5, 10, 8, and 5. Let's look at the picture.
So these children are younger than that.
Yes, they are. So I can tell you that the little guy on the left with the blonde hair and the skirt, he's less than 5.
Yes.
And you can
I'm
find
guessing,
these outfits.
I'm guessing 3 or 4.
Yeah, you can find 4. Yeah, you can find these outfits in the Sears catalog, which are on ancestry.com. And this guy on the right, he's wearing a modified Little Lord Fauntleroy look, which was very popular because of the Francis Park Burnett book, Little Lord
This part here?
Yep, yeah. Generally, it's patent leather shoes and satin pants and big long curls, but that big bibbed shirt with the big bow and the lace on the cuffs, that's pretty much the look of the Little Lord Fauntleroy, only a modified one. And then the oldest boy is the one in the back. He's maybe, so if he's,
I'm guessing he's
supposed to be, he's born about 1890, I guess is what they're saying. If he's 10 in 1900, he would be, if we made him 8, we made him 2 years younger and he was 8, then the other one would be 6 and the other one would be 3. So he could be 9. They're cute though. They're super cute little kids.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking though, is that maybe it's these kids.
The only way you to prove it is to reach out to all of their descendants and see if they have any other photographs that you can match up with them. So the little boy with the frilly collar, he has a particularly interesting face. If you look at it, there's a way he poses with his head and his mouth. He might have continued to pose for photographs using that expression. People have what I like to refer to as a photographic tell. Sort of like a poker player.
Yeah.
You tend to pose for photographs the same way throughout your life. It's very, very funny.
So that's an interesting point. And the young man in the middle, he looks like he's standing at attention almost, you know?
He's the oldest. He's got a big responsibility.
Yeah.
He's got to keep those 2 little boys in line.
Yeah.
And then the one on the left is nervous. Like, I'm in this studio, but I don't know. I'm nervous. And everybody's got their best clothes on.
And I'm told I'm supposed to behave. So here I am with my hands in front of
my hands in my lap. And you don't know what the purpose of this was. Was this just because there was a photo studio and they wanted to have their picture taken? And this took some coordination. They're in brand new clothes for the most part. And is this something they took and then kept a copy for themselves and then sent a copy back home to Denmark?
I did a Google search on this Adam Anderson in Provo, Utah, and did find a photographer. Just a brief description.
Yep.
And his lifespan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of other things you can do to research photographs and all the details. You know, where did they buy the clothes? How much did they pay for it? What does this say about their economic status? I mean, you can spend a lot of time on one picture. Most people come to me and they want to know, who is it? When was it taken? And the most common question is, which wife is it?
And this is why you are the photo detective. And speaking of resources,
yes.
You have a ton of books
yes.
on the subject. And so where can people find these books? This one is on bonnets and hats.
Yeah.
This one is on hairstyles. I know. How many books have you written now?
I don't know. I don't know. Because you only have a few of them. That one and the family. So that's the second edition. The yellow cover is the second edition of the Family Photo Detective. The first edition of that book was blue cover. Then they let me revise it. So we got the yellow cover. Then they let me revise it again. And there's the that's old. That's old. Then the new version is this one.
Nice.
Family Photo
Nice.
Detective. And I think I mentioned to you that you can buy all these books on my website.
And where is your website?
It's MaureenTaylor.com. REEN Taylor.com.
I will put it on the screen. I will put a link in the description box as well. I have learned a lot. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
helping out. Is there anything that we missed that you want to add?
I'm going to put the book on sale for a couple
Oh,
of weeks for your people. It'll be
fabulous.
on sale for $19.99. It does take
Super.
me a little bit of time to get through the orders, and there's a little bit of a delay because everything is printed as it's ordered. But you will
Awesome.
get your book, and if anybody wants me to sign one, they just put it in the note field, and you'll get one like that.
Fabulous.
No, I mean, I could talk about photographs all day, Connie.
You and me both. Genealogy in general, but a lot of great stuff you have provided us today. And
Yeah, sign up for my newsletter so you know what new books I have coming out when.
oh, I'll do that. And I'll make sure that link is in the description as well. And I do appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maureen, for spending some time with us and teaching us some of the tips and tricks that you use during your consultations. If you like the episode, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to find Maureen Taylor, you can do that at MaureenTaylor.com. There's also a list of her books in the description box below. You can find them there. I know I have about 4 of them. I can't keep my hands off of them. I'm constantly looking through them and reading about the different types of photography. So if you want to learn more about genealogy in general, check out these videos over here, and we'll catch you in the next episode.